So many HVAC owners think inventory problems show up as stockouts, and they don't. They show up as a silent cash burial. So days of inventory on hand reveals exactly how many days your money is sitting on a shelf instead of working for you. And so this is a little bit of a complex problem to solve. I mean, on the surface, it's pretty straightforward, but getting to the actual number takes a little bit of massaging the data. And so here's a pretty basic data set that you would have. And if you want this data set, there's a link to download it if you want to work along to this video. But essentially, you're going to have, when did you take your inventory? And then you have your cost, you have your value, your inventory value beginning and ending, and then how many, issues, how many you sold essentially. And then what we need to calculate are these 4 columns here. So the first one is really straightforward. What I'll do is I'll just redo some of these over here. So days in the month, because we have here, this is the month end, right? So we just need to essentially get 31 for January, 28 for February. So we need to calculate that. And there's a very simple function called day, right? And so day, and then highlight the date, and then you'll get the days. And you can see down here, you have February, right? And so it'll just give you the date, but you have to make sure that this column is the end of the month. And then the next thing we want, the cost of goods sold for the issues that you had. And so it's going to be just unit cost times the number of units sold. So equals, this times this here. And so you can see that that's matching this. And then the next thing we want the average inventory value, which is just the average of these two numbers here, beginning versus end. So that's the average function, which is this. And then finally, we want to calculate the days on hand. And so what we do is we take the inventory value divided by the issues COGS number. And then what we have to do as well is we have to divide that by the days in the month, right? So essentially what this is saying is you have 31 days in the month. In the month, you sold $200 worth of this product. So what is the daily amount you sold, right? And so here, I'll just do the math here. So this is saying on average, of course, you might not be open 31 days a month, but that's fine. On average, you've sold, $6.45 worth of inventory per day, and you have on average this much. So how many days, right? You take the average inventory value divided by the amount sold per day, and then from there you get your days on hand. And so what it's going to be equals this divided by issues COGS, right? Or here, I can redo it from here. So it's going to be average inventory divided by this number divided by this. I need to fix the brackets here, I think. Let's see what's going on. Without having the column header names, it's a little bit hard to audit the formula. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, so there you go. I had one extra parentheses. And so you can see this equals, this shouldn't be a $sign, but that gives you this number. And so, yeah, so I just wanted to show you how to recalculate these, but I wanted to delete them because we don't need them. But essentially that's how you do this. So what this is saying is we have an average inventory value of this. The amount we sold on average per day is this divided by this. And then you just divide those two. You divide this by that math, and you get the number of days on hand, right? So if you have $400 of average inventory for that part, and you're doing $10 a day, then you have 40 days worth, right? And so because this is a fairly large data set, we're going to use a lot of functions to recreate this. So the first thing we need a unique list of the months on the month end date, if you remember, here. So right here, and again, whenever you highlight this, make sure you use the table. See how it says table here and not the column. And now you have the unique list of dates. I'll just put date, and then I'll format this properly. And then I'll copy this and paste it as values. Okay, and then across the top here, we want a unique list of the parts category. So unique table, and then the parts category. And so we got that here. The next thing we want to do is we want to sort this alphabetically. So we're going to do sort. And then now we want this across the top instead of, in a column. So we're going to use transpose. And then copy, and then Control-Shift-V to paste. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to essentially redo this math, but in a single cell, right? So we need to, what we can do here is we can sum this, and we can divide by the sum of this, but with this one, we have to do the math of the division first, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to start from the bottom of the formula, the denominator, and the denominator is going to be, actually, no, let me start at the top, because I want to show you the days part. So we want to get the sum of the average inventory value for blower parts for January. So sum if S. And then in the table, we're going to have the average inventory value, comma, where the table parts category is C2, comma, and in the table, the month end date is B3. Right, so that gives us the average, the sum of that column for blower parts for January 31st. And then we want to divide this, and I'll just do this down here in a different cell, then I'll combine them in a second. So we want to divide this by the sum of the issues, table, and then the issues COGS, comma, and then the same thing as before, where the parts category is C2 and the month is B3. Whenever you don't close your brackets, and I didn't use a comma here, I'm going too fast. So comma, and then close. Okay, so you have this number, but this is the total amount. We don't want to divide this by this. Like, essentially what's going to happen, right? So you have 2.55. And so I'll just put this down here, 2.55. But before we can do the math, we need to divide this by the month, the days in the month. So if you remember the day function we just did, and it's 24.89. So in other words, per day for blower parts, you're spending $2,400, $2,500, or you're selling essentially the cost of goods sold that you're issuing is $24.89. Now we can divide the two. So what I'll do is I'll highlight this, and then I'll just divide by this. Let's see if that works. No, it doesn't work. And the reason is because if you remember your order of operations, so we have to divide this first. Yeah. So if you remember, what was it, PEMDAS, something like that, parentheses, exponents, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction from your math days. And so this is the number. So essentially what we're getting here, right? So you can see what we're getting here. This number here is the number of months, and we want the number of days. And so that's why you can't use that. You got to divide by that first. Okay, so now we're almost done pretty much, but what we want to do is we want to drag this over and drag this down, but we can't, and the reason is because this is what's called relative referencing. So you'll notice C2 here now becomes C3, which is good. But this here in the date column, you can't really see it, but you see the red line. We want it to stay in the date, but you can see it's moving over. So it's not searching based on the month. And so what you have to do, anywhere you want the column, like the red, to stay the same as you go left to right, as you drag it across, you need to put a $sign before the column, which is the letter in Excel. So put the $sign here, put the $sign here, and here. And then for the row, you put the $sign before the row, which is a number. And you can also press F4. You can press F4 to cycle through this. But we want it before, so right there. And then now you'll still need to copy and paste it across, because the way the table, like, you'll see average inventory value changes to days on hand, but that's just the nature of tables. So just copy it, paste it, and you're good to go. And so yeah, that's how you calculate it. One last little thing, I'll show you how to create a little heat map. So say, for example, you want something highlighted if it's above X number of days. So we'll choose 80. And then so what I'll do is I'll highlight this, and then I'll go to home, conditional formatting, highlight cells greater than, and then click on 80. And so you can see, and I mean, this sort of makes sense, right? Like your more expensive items, you're keeping them in inventory longer, and then you're going through, a lot of refrigerant, right? And so, yeah, one last thing I want to show you is, say you're sharing this with your team and you have a target of, again, we can use 80. You can use, whatever you find most valuable. But what's happening is that you're losing the formatting. And the reason is because this is being stored as text. And so we want it to be stored as a number. So I'll type 80 and then I'll press Control 1 and then I'll go to custom and then I'll go to 0 and then target :space quotations. And then you got it like that. And now it's being stored, as you need it. But anyways, that's all I got for this one. If you have any questions, just let me know. If you need this file here, you can. There's a link to download it. If you need some help recreating this file, there's also a link top of my calendar, or you can shoot me an email. Also, if you want the file, if you can't find it, shoot me an email here. questions@databoards.io. But anyways, that's all I got for this one, and I'll see you in future lessons.